The next few slides, I'm just going to kind of go over what we found in doing some research regarding your convention center facility and trends. Some of the facts I just wanted to share with you. This isn't a class, but basically 80% of all events are held in exhibit halls of 50,000 square feet or more, and that's net square feet, or that's an exhibit space. Your convention center would be considered a small convention center because it's only 22,000 square feet. And exhibit halls, less than 100,000 square feet, these are all per PricewaterhouseCoopers. Average attendance to a small exhibit hall under 100,000 square feet is about 135,000. Again, you get about 63,000 at your events. And the number of events is about 56. You actually have a lot of events. The average events in the past 10 years, you've had an average of 81 per year. So you have a lot of events, but they're smaller. They're much smaller. Types of facilities. If you look at the kind of meetings that you're attracting and the kind of spaces and attendance that they have in general, this is across the board, and the kind of spaces they need. I highlighted the 3 areas where I think that the convention center is lacking, and that would be under conferences, conventions, and exhibits, mainly because you don't have a banquet hall. Many of those kind of organizations, like associations, they like to have banquet halls that they can have the entire group in with their keynote speakers and so on. So basically, I was just highlighting that in the meetings, where you lack the most space would be for conventions, conferences, is the lack of a banquet hall. That's basically what this table is telling you. Now here at South Padre Island, we looked at all the events you've had in the last 10 years. Fortunately, you do have quite a bit of your percentage of visitors coming from conventions and conferences, and that's good because they average about 3 nights. They average in those kind of meetings, staying about 3 nights. Meetings also, you have about 20%. So that's a good sign that you're going after the right market. And you got about 18% sport events, special events, I think is considered like Bike Fest and those kind of events. Trade shows and then box office. So this is data from your last 10 years. Convention center attendance, I think we've already mentioned that it averages about 63,000 attendees a year. You can see from the table that sometimes you get 78, sometimes you get only 55. The smaller ones can be attributed to Dolly back in 2008, 2009, probably. Competitive markets, we looked at Corpus Christi because we looked at Texas mostly because this is the market that you're probably going after. Corpus Christi last year had 146,000 attendees. That's quite a bit more than you get here. They have enlarged their convention center, and the architect for that convention center we have for ours, for that expansion. And last year they had about 117 events, which you had about 81. Basically, they have 75,000 square feet of exhibit space, which is a lot of stuff. So they're going after a much higher market, and that's probably why they're bringing in so many people, but they're your closest competitors in terms of being on the Gulf. You have 22,000, Moody Gardens has 52,000 square feet of exhibit space, and McAllen has 60,000 square feet of exhibit space. And all these exhibit spaces can be broken up into smaller spaces, so they're able to adjust depending on the meetings that they have coming in. Peak event capacity, you have about 1,000, a little bit more, because I think Lacey told me she can get about 1,500 in there. She tries hard. But really, based on the square footage, 1,000 comfortably can be accommodated. Corpus Christi about 3,400, and 2,700 over in McKenna. We received a list of lost business opportunities from the city. And what I did was I basically picked the top 10 reasons. I thought it would be interesting to see why people were either canceled or didn't come. And basically the top 10 reasons you lost some convention business in the last 10 years, by the way. This data was since 2000. Basically the top one was they just basically canceled the entire event. Some people said that hotel rates were too high. There was no response from the client. Economy was another one. And you can see that's the purple one. The event did not take place. Insufficient meeting space. sleeping rooms not available, Hurricane Dolly, and then quality hotels. You'll notice that the $10 million figure is related to insufficient meeting space. That's because even though they had less individuals commenting that's why they didn't come, they had a lot more delegates, so they couldn't come. In other words, this is based on what you usually calculate per delegate, how much they would spend in 3 days and so on. So basically, because they didn't come, you lost about $10 million worth of revenue. So I found that was very interesting information, and this comes from the city has this information. Potential target markets. As I mentioned, most associations, in Texas there's about 410 associations, and 262 of them have 3,000 members or less, which would be, you would be looking at that type of market, I think. 117 we looked up have already been booked, or they were booked last fall, so there's obviously quite a few conferences and meetings out there happening at the time that we're trying. This whole exercise is also to try and bring more business in during the winter and during the fall. So it's important to know how many conferences are out there. Associations are a good target market because they stay longer than the regular meetings and corporate meetings. Corporate meetings, apparently corporate spending is starting to climb slightly in 2012, and what we've been reading is that they're starting to send their employees to conferences again, and so that might be a good target market at this time to begin going after. Academic conferences might be another one. Apparently a lot of the universities host or send their executive staff and their facilities managers. I think you recently had the TCUF conference here in October, which are facilities, university facilities individuals. They have conferences every other year, and so that's a good target market here in Texas. And then I'd like to start going over some of the priorities for the renovation and expansion. We have broken up the work into 4 priorities. Priority number 1 would be the emergency repairs. Priority number 2 would be the existing facilities renovation. Priority number 3 would be the site work and parking related to that and related to possible expansion. And priority number 4 would be the expansion. And just briefly, I'd like to go over some of the and the costs that we've associated with some of this work. The biggest issue over at the convention center right now is the skylight leaks. It apparently has become almost a liability issue for the convention center. So we engaged the company of Amtech to give us some recommendations on how to repair that and replace the skylight, whatever the architect decides is the best path forward. Also the chiller, apparently Lacey's been holding it together with Band-Aids. She has a proposal right now to replace the chiller. It's the original one, so it's all rusted through. And then we have some wall leaks at the EFA system. You can see the EFA system in that first picture up there. A lot of the leaks that we thought were roof leaks, because you do have a new roof there. We roofed right after Dolly. A lot of the leaking that we're experiencing is actually coming through the walls. So those are the emergency repairs that we feel need to go forward right away, even while you're in design for the rest of the work. Basically, we've estimated a new chiller, and these are ballpark figures, 100,000. Skylight allowance, that's only an allowance, it's 100,000 depending on the solution that is put forward by the architect. And then the wall roofing repair allowance is 50,000. We have that budgeted about 250,000 allowance. Priority number 2, existing facilities renovation. As Gilbert mentioned, the ROFA report, which is on the website. You can read it yourself if you can't sleep at night. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, most important. Their life cycle has reached their end. Basically, they're the 20-year-old system. Severe corrosion of the mechanical units. As I mentioned, some of the chillers need to be replaced. Mechanical louvers don't meet code. T12 lighting is outdated and inefficient, so we'll probably have to bring that up to current energy codes. Building envelope doesn't meet current windstorm requirements. Vapor barrier in the wall, that's why you're having leaking in some of those walls, is you don't have a vapor barrier. Glazing doesn't meet current codes. The windows, apparently they put a film on it that used to meet code but doesn't meet code anymore. So we'll have to talk to the architect about how we are going to either replace the glass or maybe come up with another solution. Canopy supports are very severely corroded. You can kind of tell in this first picture, you might not be able to see it there, but you'll see it in the when you download it, a lot of what the architect found in his report is a lot of the studs and the exterior walls are rusted. What we need to do, as soon as we have a contractor on board, is do some forensics and go cut a few holes in some of those walls and actually see which walls have the most deterioration. Until then, until we really see what we're up against, we really can't tie down this estimate, because if we have to do a lot of wall work, well, we'll need to take that into consideration. But right now, our opinion of probable cost, we're using $130 a square foot figure, which sounds like a lot of money, but it really isn't on South Padre Island. When you're building on South Padre, basically you have a 76,000 square foot building at $130 a square foot budgetary figure, so that's where the $9.8 million comes from, the number that you've probably been seeing or hearing from other people for the renovation. That basically comes down to $130 a square foot. The third priority would be site and parking. When in the report, and you can go out there and see it yourself, we need to restripe and reseal the parking lot. There's a lot of site lighting that's rusted and no longer is working and corroded. And then the new parking, the architect will probably have to check the parking count and see if we're going to need to add parking. We have allowed about $500,000 for all the site repairs, but we have, you'll see a $5 million figure, and that might seem really high to you, but if you do if we find out that if we do the addition, we're probably going to have to add 300 spaces to meet the requirements for the parking for the new facility. So that is really a budgetary figure for new parking. Should we go in there and do the addition, we have a fairly good figure in the event we need to really add a bunch of parking. And then finally, priority 4 is the expansion. Right now what we're showing is, of course, your existing building is 76,000 square feet. Our recommendation, this is our recommendation, and the architect must confirm the space requirements when they start doing their programming. We're recommending, and this estimate is based on a 40,000 square foot exhibit space, which means you're adding 18. Basically, that's what that means. You're adding 18,000 square feet to that building. A banquet hall of about 10,000 square feet. Currently, I think the largest one you have here is about 6,000 at one of the hotels. Meeting and breakout space, we have 14,500, but you already have 12. That's existing. We're just adding 2,500. In other words, we're not adding a lot of new space, but we're bringing you up to a higher level. And then, of course, with an addition, you need to add more lobby circulation, probably restrooms. The kitchen will probably have to be remodeled depending on the function of the banquet hall. And just as a benchmark, I put the Johnson report in here. They had a 42,000 square foot exhibit / banquet hall. They recommended that the banquet hall be part of the exhibit hall. And we may go back to that, I don't know. That'll be something that TDS needs to look at. They had meeting and breakout space a little bit more than we did, 16,600, and then a lot more lobby, circulation, storage, and administration space than we think is necessary. So again, this gives you kind of a snapshot of the difference between what we're recommending at this point and what the Johnson report has. They also recommended an amphitheater in the report, and I'm only mentioning this just so you'll know, and a hotel in that report, and you can read that report, but we are not recommending that at this time. This just gives you a quick look at the possible areas for expansion. This is what we call a bubble diagram. It's not necessary to scale, it just gives you an idea of what we think we might do. The purple areas would be where we'd add to what we think is most cost effective to add to the exhibit hall. Basically adding directly to the parking lot next to it, the same bay width and height. That would be the simplest way to add. And the other purple box gives you an idea where you might have additional storage, because obviously you're going to have a lot more things to store. You might have some restrooms in that area also. The pink area would be an extension of your lobby, basically just extending out. We're considering using Lacey's office area with our existing space as breakout room and moving her into the eastern side of the lobby, because she needs more space. And possibly a ballroom overlooking the bay. That's just an idea right now, that we might be able to put a ballroom that's really nice with glass and high ceilings and, a nice space on that side. So that's basically the scope that we're looking at as an addition. Larger exhibit space, banquet space, catering kitchen, which is your existing kitchen, just reworked. Additional breakout rooms, some additional restrooms, because we're going to need them for the additional size conventions, and additional parking. So here's the estimate, opinion of probable cost. At this point, we're using a $250 square foot figure for the new construction. You've already renovated it. This is just brand new bricks and mortar construction. So you're looking at about a $9.7 million figure for the new construction. We have put in an allowance for any utilities and things that need to be moved in order to accommodate the new addition. So you're looking at about a $10.2 million figure for, at this point, for that work. So putting it all together, basically emergency repairs about $250,000 are budgeted. Hard costs, new construction 9.7, renovation 9.8, site allowance is $1 million, the 500 that was in the new and the 500 that was in the site work, and then the parking we have that at $5 million. And so that's where the $25 million figure for construction comes from, which you probably heard around town. On top of that, you're going to have soft costs. With any project, we're going to have your architectural fees. In this case, you'll probably have consultant fees for AV consultants. You'll probably have some other consultants related to convention centers. You'll have your furniture, fixture, and equipment. That's FF&E. With a new addition to the convention center, and if you do a ballroom, you're going to have some nicer furniture you need to buy. You're going to have a lot of AV equipment. None of that's included in your bricks and mortar cost. That's always something that you buy that's separate from the building construction. And you have your contingencies. I think we have about a 10% contingency, and miscellaneous expenses like geotech and construction testing, things like that, all would go out of that figure. So that's where the $30 million comes from. Everybody's been.
And Diane, if I can add, the original Johnson report had $38 million in terms of with more square footage. Our charge was to look at a much more conservative, a very, very conservative approach in terms of overall project costs. And this is a target that was given to us as a team by the planning committee and planning group in terms of moving forward. It could be less based upon what happened. This is the worst case situation, so I just want to mention that in terms of the overall cost.
And then we did just a basic projection. If you were to, let's just say, you add to the building first 2 years, 2013, 2014, if it goes as quickly as we can, you probably will not see any kind of increase at all because, it'll be under construction. The year after that, probably a very limited increase, but it starts kicking up. We assume it'll be going up at least the minimum, a very conservative number, so that you would be at least at 97,000 attendees by 2020. So we're gradually taking you up. We don't want to be too, we're hoping it would go faster, but gradually showing a projected increase in attendees, which I guess Gilbert mentioned would be an impact of about 45 million. And lastly, our timeline. We were hoping to start design in February, schematic design. Design development would happen sometime during the summer, and we wanted a guaranteed maximum price from the contractor by September or so. With guaranteed maximum price, you usually get that sometime in the middle of construction documents. So they'll still be finishing the plans while the contractor's pricing it. Bidding and negotiations, again, September, October time frame, and then construction at least 16 months so that we can finish substantial completion sometime in the first month or so of 2015.
I think what's important.
A very aggressive schedule.
Yeah, I think what's important in the schedule is that from a planning perspective, we need to plan several years ahead because we need to start looking at the cycle of getting some possible convention attendees coming to this particular location. So it takes, so a lot of these groups are already on a rotation 2 to 3 years. So we need to be that far ahead, thinking that far ahead, if that's the direction we need to move forward in terms of overall schedule. And I guess the big question for everyone is the net difference, if we stay where we're at without the expansion, the impact is about $30 million per year. If we do decide, and if that's the decision, with the exhibit hall expansion and ballroom, it could generate an additional $15 million per year. As you can see, the payback is almost 1 year in terms of the additional cost it would to pay for that particular expansion. So that's a decision that we all can make in terms of moving forward, but that's the overall path. Path forward is obviously we're working with our consultants to work with the professional design consultants and the contractor, and we'll be forwarding a recommendation to City Council. That is still a moving target in terms of scope, but we have to go through a planning process in terms of programming, master planning, before we can actually determine what the overall scope will be, what the overall cost will be. But we need to focus on those emergency items. There are some life safety issues. Texas Society, or the local architects had a conference here not too long ago, and there was a storm came in, and one of the ladies working at the counter slipped and fell and hurt herself. So this definitely is a life safety issue in terms of water infiltration off those skylights, so we need to work on that as soon as possible. And beginning the master plan, working with our design professionals and confirming the project. In terms of scope, then we can come back in terms of what the overall cost will be in terms of moving forward. And I think that's our path forward. And in terms of all this information, we will have this posted on the website in terms of all the information you've seen today, all the reports, everything that's come up today in terms of, we felt like that was the best way for everyone to access the information. I think with that, Mayor, I think we've kind of completed our presentation. If you want to kind of lead the Q&A session.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, this information, as well as anything that happens from here on, will be loaded onto that website on a continuous basis to let you know where we are, what's happened. Although I do intend on having at least one, if not 2 or 3 more of these town hall meetings to bring everyone up to date. But this information will be loaded on the website. As soon as we get it, it'll be loaded on the website. And if you have a question or a comment, there's a place you can go to and ask your question. It'll be directed to the individual that can best answer it. And and if it's not answered, everybody knows my number, how to get it. So, and feel free to use it.